What's up, Podbeaners? It's the Bean Team back again with another podcast. I'm your host, Milo, and with my wonderful co-host, Bethany.
On today's episode, we'll be talking about children of soldiers dealing with separation. We're going to discuss how this separation affects these children and how we here at the Bean Team think the military should solve this problem.
But before we get into that, we have a quick advertisement to help support the podcast.
Wow, it's Reese's Puffs. An extraordinary part of this good breakfast.
Now about your allowance.
Okay, so back on our topic for today. These children, who often have their parents gone due to them serving in the military, greatly suffer and benefit from this absence. On one hand, these kids learn a great deal of responsibility and skills that will continue to benefit them throughout their life. Yet it also creates a great deal of stress and separation anxiety at the time that their parents are gone.
I can only imagine that these children having their parents gone for a large part of their life would negatively impact them. Children need their parents in their life to act as their role model and help them become the people that they are for the rest of their lives. People change the most as children, so having their parent in their life impacts their being in major ways.
I understand where you're coming from, but these parents are off serving their country, so they could still be role models for these children by instilling a sense of nationalism and pride in them. Multiple studies on how children are impacted by their parents being at war, like How Deployment Stress Affects Families by Cody Underwood, highlight the positive effects of having military parents.
You know, you're right. Things for these kids aren't all bad. They learn a great deal of responsibility and are also part of a bigger community of military families. Programs like the Junior Raptor military program let these kids join together and learn what it's like to be in the military. They also learn how to adapt to new situations when they moved off often.
All good points, Bethany, but having parents in the military also makes these kids suffer greatly. We have a psychologist here today to discuss these points. Her name is Ruhi Jain. Let's bring her in. How are you doing?
Hey Bethany and Milo, I'm doing great, and yourself?
I'm doing good. So Ruhi, what have you observed with your research?
Well, first off, thank you so much for having me here. I feel so honored to be part of the Bean Team today. So separation, that's a hefty topic. From my research, I've noticed that trauma and separation can greatly vary from person to person. Many children may develop symptoms that mirror those of their injured parents. An example might be a young child having nightmares because of their parents' nightmares or because they are too busy worrying about their parents' behavior. Over time, this can be very detrimental to a child's health. Children shouldn't think of such dark topics. They should be outside playing in the fields or with their friends. People in our generation are quite good at building walls. They portray a different person on the outside. This interduality, looking the same but not acting the same, is troubling for family members, friends, and co-workers, and can be particularly confusing for children who thrive on parental consistency, trust, and safety. These poor children didn't sign up for this. These kids also face a constant fear for their parents' lives and constant anxiety while their parents are away at war. These kids should be worrying about what color crayon to use, but instead they're worried that their parents might not make it home for the next birthday.
Wow, how do you think having their parent at war affects these kids long term?
Oh, it definitely has a long-lasting impact on these kids' lives. Odds are they will have separation anxiety for long past the time that their parents are home from war and will continue to have it with different people throughout their lives.
That must be really hard on these kids. What do you think the military or the government could do to make life easier on these kids?
I think the military could instill guidelines in which an active soldier with a family should be allowed to spend half the time that they are away at war at home with their family. So if a soldier spends 8 months at war, they get to spend 4 months at home with their family.
I think that would be great for these kids because there are countless stories of children who don't get to see their parents for months, and when they finally come home, they get deployed just a few weeks later. These kids also have such a hard time when it comes to moving. When their parents get moved to a different base in the U.S., the family moves with them, meaning the kids have to start all over in school and make new friends. This moving can be really hard on these kids when they don't have a constant family or stable home. Moving can be such a strain on these children.
Thanks for chatting with us, Ruhi. Now we'll be accepting calls online. Call us at 1-800-PODBEAN to talk about your experiences or thoughts on children who have parents serving in the military.
Oh, look at that. We got a caller on line 1.
Caller, please state your name and where you're calling us from.
Hey Milo and Beth, my name is Charlie and I'm from California. I'm a long-time Podbeaner. I've been here since the episode on Obamacare.
Oh wow, you're a true day one Podbeaner.
Oh, for sure, long-time fan. I even got your merch.
So Charlie, what experiences or thoughts do you have to share with us about children with parents in the war?
My father fought in Vietnam for 4 years, so I know what it's like to be a child in the military family. I'm the oldest of 2 younger brothers, and since my father was not around much, most of the responsibility fell to me. I became the man of the house. I had to become very mature at a very young age. I had taken on the responsibilities and the role of a father to my younger brothers. Those years were quite tough on my mother especially. I tried to do everything I could to help her out. I was working a job, driving my brothers to practice, and at the same time I was putting myself through high school. Usually, kids at my age were worrying about what Starbucks drink to order, while I was worrying about whether or not we had enough money to cover that month's rent, or whether or not my father was still alive, captured, or dead. This whole experience brought our family closer together. We relied on each other more to make it through the next day. Life was very hard during the time my father was away. Being a military family has made us all very resilient. A military life can be unpredictable, so parents and children have to be ready to switch gears at a moment's notice. This has made them adaptable to any situation and boosted their self-confidence.
Wow, that's great. It's amazing you and your family are so unified. Was there any other benefits?
I'm sure there are people out there, specifically those not in the military, who see military parents in a negative light. The truth is that it is quite difficult, but being in the military is one of the best things for my family. It's already instilled a sense of patriotism, love, and devotion for their country like nothing else could. With that comes self-sacrifice as a deeply embedded quality that my siblings have and show regularly. The best part is that physical fitness is important to them. Since staying in shape is a requirement of the military, and since our family is a witness to this lifestyle, and it is only natural for them to follow suit. When all of their friends are playing video games, my siblings are outside enjoying nice weather. A family run or bike ride is not out of the ordinary.
Thanks for chatting with us, Charlie. Bethany, does this information affect your stance on this at all? I mean, of course it's difficult, but look at what he had to say. His family is unified more than ever, and they seem great.
Keywords, Milo, they seemed great. Appearances aren't everything. There's always distress behind the curtain, as Ruhi mentioned. Yes, becoming responsible is great and everything, but children still need their fathers and mothers. There are some things you just can't learn, and the trauma war causes to these children is terrible. I read from the article PTSD, National Center for PTSD, that a family became isolated from one another. They all built walls around their true feelings. They were all so worried about our father. Their youngest brother suffered the most. This one time, they received a phone call that their father had been injured and that he got a 3-week leave and that he was coming home. The little brother was so traumatized that their father had been hurt that since then he jumps a little time every time the phone rings. He fears it's bad news. Often during the night, he would wake up screaming because of a nightmare.
Well, we had some great conversations today with Ruhi and Charlie. We learned the pros and cons of children with deployed parents in the military. While being separated from the parent gives the child a sense of responsibility and helps him function independently, the child also has a void left in his childhood where the parent would be. We'll leave it up to the listeners to decide whether they think that the separation of the child from their parent is a benefit or a hindrance.
And that wraps up this episode. Stay tuned for next week's podcast that will cover immigration.
Thanks for listening, host. I'm your host, Milo.
And I'm your co-host, Bethany. This was
The Podbean Podcast. Thanks for listening.
KFC. It's extra crispy good.